welcome you to another edition of Hold My Cutter on the road here at Lee Com Ballpark in Bradenton, Florida. And Michael McHenry and I are enjoying the quarter-century Rocky Patel, the 25th anniversary smoke, as is our guest, owner of the Johnstown Millrats, a prospect summer league team. Incredible history. Chad Gonkiewicz is an interesting guy because not only is he the owner of the Johnstown Millrats, but he joined the Air Force after 9/11. He's a combat systems officer in AFSOC, Air Force major. First of all, Chad, thanks so much for being with us. We'll get into
Love being here.
Yeah, this is amazing. But obviously
that's called a mic.
Yeah, I love being here. Thanks.
No, that's called a mic.
Hold my cutter.
Yeah, hold my cutter. But
Really appreciate it.
But Chad, how did you get involved? First of all, because we're kind of a baseball theme. Cutter, of course. You cut the cigar, and the cutter is a pitch in baseball. How did you get involved with the Johnstown Millrats?
Well, I think it's something that you don't see coming. You know, like anything else in life with that same pitch you're talking about. You know, it's just you got to be ready for it. And it came across the plate for Jill and I. And
Is your wife Jill?
My wife is Jill.
Okay.
And she's partner.
How long have you had the club?
This will be so my wife Jill and I got in with my buddy Bart, who we grew up with, and his dad was a pillar in our community, and Bart and I kind of looked at each other at the same time. We're like, hey, what do you want to do here? They're looking for some local representation. There's some need here, and we both live there. We choose to live in Johnstown. I mean, that's there's a lot of people in Johnstown who choose to live there. Times are tough, and it's a choice to remain. There's deep roots. There's shared trauma. 3 natural disasters over a 120-year period. I mean, there's connections in the community. It's not all, new construction, but everyone kind of knows the history of buildings. This one moved 20 feet during this flood, and so-and-so played here. So you choose to live there. And you're like, we live here, let's make it better. Here's something that needs some attention and our input. And we decided to say, hey, we'll get involved and take a look, and that's it.
And you've had it for how long?
This will be our 4th year as a local ownership group, and then we welcomed on a few other people along the way. And then once this converted from the majority ownership group as they pivoted away from Johnstown,
They packed up and left.
yeah, we looked at each other and we're like, are we full of it, or are we put our money where our mouth is?
You're saying the previous owners packed up and left? Mm-hmm. How long had it been around? This is a silly question for those that know the job. I don't know this, but how long had it been around?
It came during COVID.
The Millrats came around during COVID?
Yeah.
What was there before? The point, by the way, your home games are at the historic Point Stadium.
Yes.
And anybody that's in Western Pennsylvania knows about Point Stadium. That's historic, iconic.
I played there.
You played there.
Yep.
I mean, some of the all-time greats have played at Point Stadium.
Absolutely.
But a lot of history disappears in front of us if we don't pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And that was unfortunately something that, baseball people saw the stadium for what it was and where it was headed, into kind of obscurity for a little bit, and then some guys came in, jumped in, saw something with it, and needed to leave for reasons, and we thought that they kind of missed on a few branding aspects to the team and how they approached the community with it. And
Can I give a little bit more clarity on that?
Go ahead.
He saw a better opportunity, a faster payday. And a lot of these guys in the collegiate summer leagues, they come in and try to get a quick buck. They sell the team, they move on. And then a lot of them do it because it's their heart song. And you don't do it necessarily because it's a great investment. You do it because you love the city. And you have to actually genuinely care about that city. If you don't, there's a problem. Because if you don't have that, that's why we brought in the local, group immediately, because he wanted the goodwill. And then you get the goodwill, and then you go to city council. City council, you go to the mayor, and then you try to get things that you want done. He just didn't follow through. And right, wrong, or indifferent, he left, and a group of people stepped up, including Bart, to take leadership. And I think the town deserves it. And you talked about that stadium. Yeah. The stadium is historic. You're talking about, Jackie Robinson played there. Babe Ruth played there. Lou Gehrig, Mickey Mantle. I mean, it goes on and on. The list is very, very long and extensive. I mean, NFL guys, because they still play football there with the local high schools. But there's 13 teams that play there right now, Brownie, including the Millrats. So that whole community is wrapped around this stadium called The Point. I call it the heartbeat of Johnstown.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I think he saw it, they saw it, and they took advantage of it, and it's been amazing to see. So now take it away, sir.
No, that was perfect.
Oh, his humbleness wasn't going to let some of that out, I don't believe.
2020 data, what can you do with it?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's no price signal anywhere in the market. It was all a mess. So, we looked at it as these guys are trying to make decisions based on bad data, and they had to vacate their position based on that. And we thought that was way off and wrong. And we decided to dive in head first and consolidate a lot of inefficiencies we saw with the stadium. So just looking at, like Michael said, who uses it? How do they use it? What's the economics of baseball in the area? And then that just grew into a much larger discussion where you have to try to align incentives of multiple players in the region. And as long as Michael's been with us, he's really seen the fact that there's a lot of love for Johnstown. But you have to remember when NAFTA and other trade agreements were signed, there was a lot of pain in places like Pittsburgh, places like Johnstown. Everyone has an uncle or dad or someone who lost a job. It was a normal way of growing up. Things were tough, times were tough, but the roots were deep. Quality of life was so good. It was so good. Like, it was one of those things where you didn't even know, that you didn't have everything you needed, because it was great childhood. My parents were fantastic, but everyone who's involved in this will say the same things. Johnstown is an unbelievable pocket of Americana.
Yeah,
that is not seen these days in most of the country, and it's just sitting there with good people. Good hearts, good community mindsets, and we're trying to say, hey, there's this team came in, we want to stand it up, continue it along, and a lot of people see what can be, but you got to align incentives. There's a four-decade-long decline of steel that went on. There's generations that have been managing that decline. Saying like, hey, how do I keep my family business alive? How do I keep, my family employed? How do I have other families that I employ. How do I keep them involved here and don't put them out in the street? So they're kind of risk off. A lot of the things I talked to Michael about make a ton of sense all over the country, but locally there's been just a risk off investment mindset, because not that they can't see it, they just need that plan to say, hey, here's what this is going to look like. And baseball, which is funny. It's one of those things, like a cutter that came across. It makes so much sense that would be the catalyst.
That's the draw
to trigger all this patient, long-term kind of risk-averse capital. And once you do that, once you throw that match in that bucket of gas, it's all gonna click and make sense. And I can sit in Johnstown and scream about this stuff, but like, who am I? I've traveled all over, I've seen everywhere, but in reality, it's I'm my father's son. I'm in Johnstown.
You're in those roots, right?
Yeah, so I've just, I can bump into everybody and be like, this is what needs to happen. I've seen this elsewhere. Like, we're sitting on this. This is going to drive economy. And, historically, industry was kind of chased out of Johnstown because they didn't want it to kind of dilute the labor force. Those are mill workers, mill rats. That's like, they don't want other things to come in and take their workers. So that's all long gone now. And we don't have, we had John Murtha, who kind of understood how the American economy worked when it came to government funding for defense projects and things like that. And he helped attract and stand up the defense industry. But when you're looking at, for not to get too in the weeds here, but for an Austrian,
we always say,
Austrian economics guy, I'm a free market guy.
Right.
And I think that if you let free markets work, you can have your recessions, you can have this stuff can get cleaned up, and the fat can get kind of removed. But whenever you don't allow those things to occur and you prop up, then it's hard to make long-term capital decisions based on inefficient investment from government equity and capital, which is why there's a Lockheed Martin in Johnstown. There's a plant there. There's Kongsberg. There's major defense contractors there.
It has, what, 19, 20 different, I can't remember the number of actual like defense type companies.
Oh yeah, it's
manufacturers.
They're major employers. There's great tech jobs. There's it's all sitting there. It's just they're not part. They can't be the majority of the economy because it's not market based. It's based on taxation. So the demand side of what they're producing is based on government demand, which is great. And it's great, but if you don't have base economics occurring underneath that, it doesn't allow for those market efficiencies to take place because there's just money injected into the local community. It contributes to a quality of life, but it's just stagnant. So whenever America booms, Johnstown doesn't feel it. When America busts, Johnstown doesn't feel it. We're on a fixed income. We're Social Security, Medicare. We're the same level, and you want to have a more diversified economy. And that's kind of the way I've studied it as my thesis as an adult, and looked at how and why things haven't occurred. That was the initial question we had, but baseball. It's such an obvious thing that when it jumped out to us, my wife and I like, oh my God, how great.
When was that? When did it jump out to you? Because your story about all of a sudden 9/11 was that the impetus for you?
Well, 9/11 was to touch base on the first one. It jumped out. The team came tubing, and I'm driving the tubing bus.
Yeah, he owns cool tubing, and he's outside the box thinker, and the team came to him, and it seems like every person I met down there has like 4 kids. I hope it rubs off on me and Jacqueline. But it's wild. Yeah, they're actually populating Johnstown in a group of about 5. There could be 100 kids.
We decided to repopulate ourselves.
That's so great.
Yeah.
But they wrap people in, and they love on them. And I think that's what happened. And you see, someone chasing their dream that's really just, this kid out in the middle of nowhere, doesn't know what to do. Just about everybody in this ownership group has someone they host, and it becomes family. Yeah. And over time, that family's going to grow. I think that's what they saw because it was infused in. It was something different. They're like, oh wow, this is something different, and their kids loved it. They were enjoying going to the ballpark. I was going down there for different things, and you could see it was bringing life.
Johnstown has a soul.
It does.
And you can feel it.
Right.
Like, it's real. It is. And
meat to it.
Yeah. And when you come and meet the guys who, are coming on, come on board, you can just feel it, that there's a larger force at play. And, I always say God loves Johnstown and Johnstown loves God,
That's great.
but like it's a real thing. We'll put it on a t-shirt, but it's real. Like it's real. There's just, that stuff exists. And when it comes to, the forces that you feel when you're having these conversations, and that's where the ownership group comes in. These are great people, these husband and wives and Michael and Jacqueline. Like you can just, there's good, these days, there's good, happening, and you just want to be a part of it. Because it's so hard to, my other side of my life is forces, it kind of tends towards withdrawal from relationships and you need Americans like that, but that lifestyle kind of can pull you in that direction. It can make you detach, and I notice it every now and then for me, but I have good friends. I have good people back home and, my community who can pull me into, what matters and what life's about. And you have good mentors, people who can say, I've seen people who have miles-long funerals in Johnstown, and I've seen every now and then those that don't, and they crawled over everybody to get somewhere, and we've talked about it from the beginning. That's, my wife and I are very adamant that it's about, you want to be want to be up there with everybody, you know, and you want to see you want to see that economy pour into everyone's lives, you know, with that diversified economy. So what does that look like? So we kind of built backwards of saying, okay, well, what do we have here that no one else has? What can we do that would be cost prohibitive, differentiated, and if anyone tried to do what we're doing here, they would say it's way too expensive or too much of a pain. So that's what we did. We lined up incentives and looked at, like, how do we want to get there? How do we want to build this? But sorry, and I'm
No.
that's why Michael and I get along, because
That's
my
great.
brother can have an hour-long conversation and then come back and be like, so
Well, that's why you're.
to get back to my
Yeah.
point, and
Yeah.
you're like,
Yeah.
oh my God, how did you get there?
That's why you're perfect for Hold My Cutter.
Yeah,
by the way.
you're exactly
That's
right.
perfect.
And
So 9/11.
But But I do want to get to that.
Yeah.
Because
and also your intro, like you love this side of it too.
Yeah.
And I think, like, I don't think you understand how much I'm sure Brownie's loving this, but yeah, like it is what it is. But the passion that you're bestowing upon what you're saying, you could talk all day, and me and him would probably be like, okay, keep going, yes, this is great.
Yeah.
So
smoking a cigar and
I mean, that's
talking.
what that's all about. That's what's so great.
Yeah, no
and
doubt.
by the way, we have our coffee and you've got the cold coffee.
Yes.
I don't know what kind of.
It's a whole new thing.
Cappuccino, whatever the heck that is.
a whole
but
new-
I'm not into the cold coffee drinks, but Michael and I stick with the hot stuff.
Yeah.
Espresso.
Yep.
Yeah.
But again, how did you get pulled into your career after 9/11, and then you come back to baseball?
Yeah. I was going to drop out of high school and go be a ski bum in Colorado.
Jeez.
All my friends were going to college, and I was like, I guess I'll go. I had zero interest in education at that point. I couldn't stand. So I went to school because I loved playing football, you know, basketball, like the sports. That was why I went. And when my parents were like, do not drop out of school. Of all the things you've done to us, like, just don't do that. And so I went to a state school. I went up to Clarion, and I remember waking up and my roommates were saying, hey, we're getting so many words, we're getting messed up. I'm like, it's 10 a.m. And they were like, no, the country's, under attack. And, and everyone, was talking a big game about, I'm going to go do this, and this. And I sat there and looked, and I'm like, I'm not supposed to be here. Like, it
just hit you that fast.
Yeah. I got out of high school a day in 11th grade or 12th grade to go on an Air Force field trip so shout out to Air Force recruiting. It worked. Yeah, it worked. And because they're struggling right now because it's, there's a lull in, we're operational all the time, but there's, the big campaign, big war that's kind of died down right now. So there's a struggle with trying to fill billets. But no, that 9/11 happened, and I signed up, and luckily Bart's dad stepped in.
This is a really cool story.
Who's Bart?
Bart is Bart Vickroy.
The two original guys that walked into
So
the Millrats as minority owners, and pretty much, I would say you guys and a couple others kind of pulled it back and kept it in Johnstown.
Yeah.
To begin with.
So
this Bart.
Keep this going. You'd love Bart.
Yeah.
You'd love Bart.
Yeah. Bart's cream of the crop and salt of the earth. Him and his wife are just absolutely outstanding people too.
Yeah. And his dad, I grew up next to him. So I grew up, there was 5 of us running around, his kids, and so we always kept in touch. And his dad was a Vietnam special operations helicopter pilot that didn't really tell anybody about that.
Jeez.
And so whenever he passed, which he was a guy we could have used through COVID, just a perspective you could have enjoyed. And but Bart was showing me some of his medals. I'm like, these are big deal. These are big deal that he has.
You said one was like the Purple Heart?
No Distinguished Flying Cross. And that's about as, high speed of a, award that you can get in the Air Force. That's you got to
never talked about it.
You got to really do something. Yeah.
That's crazy.
And he was just a servant leader in the community, and he figured out I was committed to this, and then I was like, hey, I'm going in, and he stepped in and was just like, hey, I know a little something about this, go in as a enlisted air crew, because he was saying, hey, just finish your degree, commission, become an officer, go to pilot training, do these things. And I'm like, I'm trying to go be a ski bum. And now I'm being called to this. And there's military history in my family. My uncle, Mark, was a A6 intruder pilot. He died doing that. My grandpa was an Army intel guy. So there's been history. Yeah, there's been some history there. So I knew about it, but he kind of stepped into the modern way of looking at it and said, hey, go be an enlisted air crew. And it was the best advice. I mean, I flew all over the planet, been in every aspect of every campaign for the last 20, for those first 6 years. And was flying around with, I'm 19, I'm flying around with 26-year-old big brothers. There's just three of us and hitting every plane everywhere on the planet from, up near the North Pole to Baghdad to Afghanistan to Indian Ocean to Southcom to Africa, Horn of Africa, everything. And it was the coolest job on the planet. And there's, it was so cool. I mean, I laid on my stomach, as they say I laid on my stomach and passed gas, but I was a boom operator. There was an arm that came down with wings on it. And, B-52s, F-117, stealth fighters, B-2 bombers, every plane in our inventory as a country.
It's coming to you.
Would come to us, and we would refuel them on some mission in one way or another. And there's a lot of tankers out there. I happen to be on some of the coolest missions the tankers got, which was looking back, you have much more clarity of like, oh my God, that was a little intense, But at the time, you're just so trained.
Yeah.
Like these guys are so trained.
But at 19.
At 19, it was like, the war was kicking off, and it was like, who's going? We did 10 months of straight training, and then I remember sitting in the room about to graduate from my training, and there's the war's kicking off, and you're like, oh, this is going to define my entire career. I'm just going to do my 4-year stint, get my GI Bill. They were paying 100% tuition at the time, and my uncle was a retired, crusty E9 chief of the Navy, and he looked at me before I left. He's like, use the heck out of the military because they're going to use the heck out of you. And that's
another great advice.
Was the best advice. So I used every program they had, used the GI Bill. I had them pay for my bachelor's while I was in. I got motivated. I had some great NCOs when I was enlisted, and they were, holding me accountable to like growing myself. And eventually I commissioned, became an officer, and then used that GI Bill to get my MBA. Jill and I met. I heard her laugh walking in a room, and that was it. Yeah. That we were down doing Katrina relief work together as part of like a big organization, and we were at this church just kind of like recouping after working on houses and clearing debris, and she just walked in laughing. I'm like, well, that's it. So I got to hang around her now for the rest, for the rest of the trip. I was just like that puppy that wouldn't leave. Just like,
hey, Mom.
Yeah, hey, I'm here. I don't know what's your name. Yeah. But that was, I met her before I commissioned to the military. So there was always, it's her flying out to, San Antonio, down to Atlanta. It's about 2.5 years of my officer job and training for that. And it's, part of, like I said earlier, the withdrawal thing, you want to push things off. You've met Jill. She's unrelenting.
You don't push her off.
Yeah, she's unrelenting. Great. There's a reason that, things, that we're trying to do in Johnstown are beautiful, and she's all that reason. And she gets it too. She's been around, and we've talked about this stuff. She's traveled everywhere with me and without me, and she's had the perspective that you guys have. And but yeah, switching back to
go back to. Do you mind sharing that? I want to go back to 19 and where you happened to end up, and maybe you looked back and were able to understand what was happening.
Yeah,
your first real deployment.
Yeah. If you have that lighter, I can.
Yeah, no, you keep going. We'll get you.
Yeah, that lighter right there. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
That's all right. Good.
Fork can help light the. Yeah, there we go.
So, I was working at Seven Springs at the ski resort as a ranger, standing on the mountain.
Did you hear that, Bob?
Yeah.
Wow.
and I was getting paid to ski because that's what I wanted to do. And they were like, "Hey, go around, make sure fencing's up." I'm like, "You're giving me a jacket too? You know, this is great. This is great."
Give me a jacket.
I was like, "I'll work for free," but they didn't know that. I just drove my Wrangler out there and loved it. Just loved it. And but decided to enlist. And I remember standing there, and the ski patrol reached out, and they're like, "Hey, there's a recruiter on the phone." He said, "If you leave tomorrow, there's this job called boom operator that you can have." The guy, you know, they had a dropout slot. You're 4 days behind in basic training, but you gotta leave tomorrow morning. Like, I gotta get you on a flight. And I'm like, "Dude, don't lie to me. What is boom operator?" You know,
what is
this? Is before the internet.
Yeah,
you know? So this is like
you can't look it up.
Yeah. So I'm like, "You're lying to me right now, man."
Yeah,
You know?
I'm in.
Yeah. I'm like, "Sounds cool." And it was the best job. It was just the best job, hard to do. And the coolest thing about the military was you just meet patriots. Like, you just meet the best people who are there for like the right reasons. And they're just so good.
They're your brothers.
Oh my God. Your brothers and sisters, and you're used to, you're just, you know, you feel very humbled because you're like, you try to think, man, these people don't even know how good they are. You know, you love seeing them and being around them, and that's hard to get away from. So when I joined, was down in basic, got, you know, ripped apart because I was still in civilian clothes as my flight was all uniform was issued, and it was just off to the races. I mean, basic training back in Lackland, you know, I'd say right now, Army Marines, everything's harder. The Air Force is easier. Yeah. Just get that out there.
Just remember who oversight is.
Two to part. They love CAS. They love close air support, so they usually give us a break in those types of conversations. But we had, you know, went through basic training. Back then it was, you know, like I think 10 weeks, 12 weeks. And then we go on to enlisted aircrew undergraduate course, which is kind of like the washout course. It's just a whole lot of information in, you know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and they test you on it. And
you're not overwhelmed at all?
Well, no. I mean, it was, yeah. I mean, it was, basic training worked on me. I mean, it worked. Like my parents, my dad would, I totally, you know, the whole point of the military training is to break down everyone equally and then build you back up. So even if you fold your socks perfectly, day 2, it's still the worst fold of your sock they've ever seen in their entire life.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, week 6, when you're just shredded, and you're like, I don't know how to do anything. I can't do anything. And then they're like, "Oh, you might make it." And you're like, "You just cling to that."
Wow.
They saw something. I didn't get chewed out. You know, like they're not destroying me. And that's what military training is. It's just, they just dismantle you from every background. And then they reset from zero, and they build you all up the same. And then you have shared experience with those people, and you know, camaraderie, and you know, it's a real thing, you know, and that's hard to give up. Same thing with sports, you know, it's the same situational stuff.
Just a lot bigger consequence.
Yeah, you do.
Well, a little bit bigger consequence.
It can be.
Strikeout and bullet, whatever.
It can be. I mean, we're really good at what we do. You know, so, and that's what we, you know, you see military stuff flying around here. I mean, there's high-speed training going on around you every day. So when we do go employ this downrange, it's having a conversation. But it's all happening right here. Really, really high speed. So I get to enlisted aircrew undergraduate course, make it through that, and then you go to, excuse me, I got a cough real quick.
That's all right.
You go to water survival training, land survival training, and then you go to, you know, kind of like POW training, you know, how to get interrogated and tortured. And you learn, you know, and they teach you all these you know,
you had an interesting moment in that, didn't you?
Yeah, they left me in a bin. It was the best sleep I've had, like, for months.
They were worried sick.
They were worried that I, like, you know, like, there's a reason.
What's supposed to happen?
There's a reason you have like a couple hours in there. He was in there for what?
About 4 or 5. Yeah.
And just sleeping like a baby.
It's usually 20, 30 minutes.
Hours in a box.
Yeah. They finally started working backwards, being like, "Oh my God, you know, we're 5 people short." So when they opened this box, I mean, you're talking like crunched up. You know, I was much more flexible back then, so it wasn't I could sleep that way. And they opened this little hatch, and there's 4 heads like all peeking in. You know, they're like real world situation.
He had his thumb in his mouth.
I'm yawning like oh God,
You're
we're
waking me up.
back into this. They're like, no, we're mental health check, and I'm.
Yeah.
And they're like, you were in there for a little bit longer than we would have liked. And I'm like, I slept the whole time.
I was out cold,
Yeah,
just
'cause
dreaming.
They have all their, not to dive into that stuff. There's a lot of things you don't want to, I'm still in. You don't want to bring out publicly, but that one will hit home for a lot of people. I think when they who have ever had that kind of training is that'll make sense to them. But we find out. 9 months later, basically, I'm flying in, night one, going into Baghdad.
Night one.
Yeah.
Don't miss that part of it.
Yeah, there was no cruise missile shot yet. So it was everything was still, there was a speech.
Right?
Yeah, there was a speech made.
What?
And then I happened to be on,
You remember that infamous speech, right? The speech is made,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
and he's night one.
Yeah, I just happened to be in the plane that was
found out what
in the
boom
place
operator was.
when there was, a need to do that, to go in, and there's, it's the mission and all that stuff's in some books that the pilots wrote about and stuff like that. I happen to be just the 19-year-old enlisted guy in one of the planes during like the formation doing those things. But you have like your parachute on, your mask is on, you're hooked up to oxygen, you're ready to just, explode out of the sky.
Explain that part, because you guys go up to, what, 30,000 feet?
Well, it's all tactically.
Yeah, it depends
the
on the
numbers.
mission.
Yeah, all that
Numbers vary.
stuff kind of varies.
Right.
Yeah, depends on. I'm in the same boat. I keep.
Yeah, you just
that's-
keep talking. It's amazing.
And
I'll buy you a new cigar.
Yeah, no, not to get into any of those details, those numbers and stuff like that, as we don't ever confirm or
Deny.
what anything is able to do ever.
Gotcha.
Oh.
But yeah, so there's at times whenever we all like to meet up and give gas to people. That's a public thing, and we were doing stuff like that, and it was there's a lot of need for that, and it usually leads you to some really cool situations and missions. But looking back as an adult, you're just like, oh my God, that was a little more intense, and but I was ignorant. You're ignorant back then.
You're naive and ignorant.
Yeah, I was 19. And I remember just, getting down after that night, and everyone's on the ramp waving flags, waving American flags, war's on, and I'm just opening the door like I was skiing like 9 months ago. And now I'm with like two, people who I trust, and we just went and did, you got to remember there's the soft world where it's like individualized stuff, and then there's also the large machine of the U.S. military that operates, and you can see your role in it, and that's the
So what's
job
your
of an
role?
officer is to explain that to their troops and say, like, here's how you matter. Here's why what you're scrubbing underneath this, here's why that matters, and it's the job of the officer, the NCOs, to kind of explain that connection if it's not readily apparent. And a lot of people are like, I get it, but 4 years is enough for me, and the military affords you the ability to kind of switch paths when you want, which is cool, and the benefits are great. But there's also, it's not for everybody. The lifestyle's not for everybody. And there's times where you have to step back and look at other things, and the Guard and Reserve are a great way to do that. Active duty is full on all the time. Guard and Reserve, since this war started, they're full on all the time. I mean, it used to be a little different where it was, hey, these guys, you don't know if it's a Guard or Reserve or active duty plane in my world.
Could be anything.
You don't know. It could be a guy who's, has a trucking company in the middle of nowhere who just shows up and happens to be just a phenomenal aviator. It used to be the guys I hang around with in my unit, a little special ops unit in Pennsylvania. They don't even know how high speed they are. Like I go in, I see it. I can tell when I've lost a step. I've been on the river too long. I get in there and I'm just, and I tell them, that's part of growth as a officer is to not. I used to, guys would come in and act like they know what's going on, and I walk in and be like, guys, I'm 2 steps behind right now, and then I need to refresh and that's why the Guard and Reserve is built the way they're built. But that was a crazy mission, wrapping back up like my brother. It was a crazy mission that first night. A lot of people probably have similar stories to that. That's just mine. I had some real conversations with, my uncle who I never met from the Navy who died doing that. He died 2 years before I was born. I leaned on him during that time.
Yeah.
And I just knew there was a plane that came up that I needed to refuel I'd never seen before. And it's the most difficult plane to refuel. And I'm opening up this, this is what this should look like, You're
In real time.
You're just doing it. Yeah, but you're trained at such a high level. It wasn't cosmic. Like it was just one of those things where you're thinking like, okay, I need to really focus on not doing XYZ or how this is going to go down, and the United States military trains people to be to a fault where people get out. It's you have to perform, or it's very similar to sports, especially as you get towards that pointy end of the spear.
The special ops
the other
side,
the other side of the everywhere else in the world has that's where they kind of meet us, where they get to know America is technically on a more intimate basis with really, really brutal Americans. I mean just very professional. There's a quote of people sleep peacefully at night because rough men stand ready to do violence on their behalf. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
I mean, there are patriots in this country that I don't think a lot of people get to see. I get to see them.
Oh, most
I get to
vast
train with
majority
them.
of people never even don't even think.
Yeah,
about it.
and
I'm one of them. I want to go, Chad. Can you possibly detail for someone as ignorant as I am about what that first night? Like, what can you? Where were you? Where did it start? What are you talking about? Where are you going in?
Yeah, I was in a friendly country, and this is OIF, Operation Iraqi Freedom. This was the invasion of Iraq, and
you're in a friendly. What do you mean a friendly country?
I'm operating in our aircraft.
We have a lot of friendly countries.
So you can't say that. Even tell us where that is.
We don't. I try not to do like names, locations, dates. I mean, that's old.
Okay.
So it's like guys talking about Vietnam. They can really get into it.
Okay.
And this probably
you're in a friendly country.
Yeah, I've seen it in books and stuff like that. But usually when you get into that kind of details, and depending on certain planes, and I have to pass it up through.
Okay.
A channel.
All right. So
just so that.
So you're in a friendly country.
Yeah.
And you're doing what in that friendly? You personally are doing what? What's your job?
Ready to go.
Yeah, but what? What do you mean ready to go?
Refuel any coalition aircraft.
You're going to get up in an aircraft. You're going to get up in an
I'm already in the aircraft.
You're in the air.
I'm already in the air.
He's in the friendly country, just a little higher than normal.
Just waiting. Yeah.
So you're flying around.
Yeah.
Again, I'm going basic.
No. Oh, good.
You're flying around.
Yeah.
And you're looking to refuel another aircraft
as needed based on
until you're told.
Yeah, there's some planned stuff, and then there's things that aren't planned. Where they might say, "Hey, this is now your new mission. Go do this over here with these guys. You'll meet them here." And that's what you do, and that's why we're so lethal. Is we're able to pivot and change mid-mission.
Right,
and that's why the Air Force.
So you're in an aircraft with how many other guys?
2 pilots and me.
And he's laying on his belly.
And
I'm in a tanker. I'm called the boom operator. I'm laying in the back.
You're laying in the back.
What's called the boom pod. And there's a window that opens up.
Right.
And this stuff's like, it's just a handle, a window, and it opens up, and then there's an arm off the back that comes down.
And you've got to direct that into
every plane out there, NATO, America.
In midair, you're trying to refuel.
So everyone's going about,
Unbelievable.
200, 300, 400 miles an hour. And you have these wings. I have a joystick here and another extending, and you fly this thing around, where you can see guys smiling. I mean, they're that far away, even closer, and they're bringing a boom right by their face, that'll shatter the canopy, and then, so there's a lot of. But you're good. You're trained. You're good at it. I remember the first time I saw it. It was a C5 Galaxy. That's the one with the nose comes up.
Okay.
So the tail goes. The thing actually has hydraulics where it'll crouch lower to the ground, then the whole nose comes up. But they use it for training. So when I'm in Oklahoma, in beautiful Altus Air Force Base, Oklahoma, I mean, what a gem of America. That it's a beautiful place. The C5 comes up. It consumes the whole window. I remember I've flown like once or twice on a couple trips growing up, and I looked at my instructor. I'm like, you want me to do what? Like, I can't. This is insane. I'm still wrapping my head around how we're up in the air right now, and now you're bringing another plane
right next to you.
15 feet from me.
Yeah. And you've flown it maybe
Is
a
it
handful of
literally?
times.
That's the other. Is it literally 15 feet?
Yes. It's
Flying at high altitude, high speed.
We do fighters where, these guys, refueling like the Danes F-16s. These guys will do barrel rolls around your plane. Like, they're cowboys. They're different. We have rules.
Man.
But there's good pilots all over NATO, all over the earth, and you get to see them. I mean, guys get off the boom, drop it in the afterburner, and tear off into the sunset. I mean, that's real stuff that you don't. I'm just seeing.
It's like a video game.
F-14 Tomcats I flew when those were still going off of carriers, like the original Top Gun. They were involved in OIF. I refueled them a lot because you can put a drogue. They have a different refueling system. Just little things that need tweak, but we can hit all these guys, and you see everything. You see B-52s. You see every platform the Air Force employs. I had a front row seat to refuel them. Was involved in their missions, and it was just cool. It was such a cool experience that I wouldn't have had if I didn't have someone step into my life at that moment. And I've used that experience a lot to tell other people, like, hey, here's something that worked for me. And I realize that's a real thing. Like, when people step into other people's lives at pivotal moments, it matters. And, we try to be on the lookout for that kind of stuff.
So I'm a light for you as I ask you this question again. This first night, you're refueling. You're on your belly. This is Operation Iraqi Freedom, right?
Yes.
Okay. And as when do you know that it's on? Because you're refueling.
You know when it's on as soon as you leave where you're at in space and time. And when someone calls
you're
you
up flying
and
around
tells you to
waiting for
go
somebody
to
to say,
somewhere else at a certain space
get over
and time,
here at this
it's
point.
on. Yeah, you were just like, we're not supposed to be here doing this.
Oh, okay.
But they're telling us we are.
Changed.
Yeah. So it's
so.
And this is old stuff. I just don't want to overstep in any way.
You're in a good place. You're not going anywhere. By no means.
I'm just trying to get exactly what we're talking about here. So you're 22 years in the service.
Yeah.
And you go through 9/11, all this stuff.
And you've been on how
highly
many?
decorated combat veteran. Obviously, you wouldn't say that, but you are.
I'm a crew dog.
Okay.
That's been, there's different paths you can go in the military, and I've always kind of leaned towards flying.
From crew dog to Millrat, how did it get to that point?
Yeah.
So all this stuff's going on. You guys have talked about that, but how do you go from that to buying a summer league baseball team in Johnstown, Pennsylvania?
Just being open to.
But somebody has to go to you and say, "Hey, why don't you do this?"
The team came to us, went and jumped on the river and asked why we weren't involved yet. There's individuals.
Personally?
Yeah, I was driving the bus. There was a great individual with the organization who ended up becoming the GM for a period. He was asking questions that mattered, and he said, "Why aren't you involved yet?" And we're like, "Well, we're an outdoor company, and we brand Johnstown with mountains and rivers and things like that." And I said, "And we absolutely want to support the point and baseball in Johnstown. We want to make sure that we can do it in line with our vision and what we're trying to invest towards." And that's it. That started the conversation, and we're like, "Look, we need to get involved here and help steer how this can work." Johnstown's it's its own market. It's a tough market. It is not there's an ego in Johnstown like there is anywhere else. There's a self-esteem in Johnstown.
Pride, of course.
Yeah. And we tend to. I've always taken the big brother stance when I communicate about Johnstown. I have a little chip on my shoulder on purpose with, especially people in town who talk about it.
Yep.
But the folks around the area tend to knock themselves first before anyone else can. And that's a shame. And if and I think there's this, if the team would have left it would have made that true. It would have made
Again.
Yeah. It would have been harder to lift people up. But everyone in Johnstown tends, because the economy's declined and there was one employer, they tend to look to, the government and say, like, hey, fix this.
Yeah.
What's going on? Why hasn't this fixed?
Right.
And that's a shame, because there's good people in the city running the city.
Right.
Like, they're trying.
Yeah.
They have limited resources and bandwidth, and they're doing what they can. And sorry.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, they're running a city a size that they shouldn't have to with minimal resources. I mean, if you look at the infrastructure of Johnstown, he knows way more than I do. They should have a lot more employees. They're not ready to win, Brownie, as we've talked about before. And that's what they need. They need a big hug. And, people like Chad and this group have definitely done that. But I think it goes back to his service, and he sees Johnstown as that other element that he could maybe be a servant leader to, because that's how it started.
Yeah. And you also own Johnstown Paper Company.
Yes.
This is cool.
That is.
And when it started, it's even cooler. Yeah.
It's like anything with entrepreneurship and capitalism. Once you start doing it, it's kind of hard to stop doing it. So you just start seeing gaps everywhere. So Johnstown, because the mill's closed, we could bring in well, this might have been more true 20 years ago, but you could absorb 30,000 people and not build another house. So a lot of folks who left, who got educated with, I'm a particular law degree, that job might not have been waiting for them in Johnstown, so they had to move. But their parents were still there, and they raised a family outside of Johnstown. Their parents pass on, or move, and they have this house there. And the house would just sit there, and it was something that the people had to deal with as a family, So we tried to think, we have a lot of blight. There was a time to save those houses and restore them, but a lot of them, the roof caved in, and so of course everyone looks at the government and says, what are you doing about this problem? Instead of allowing natural, Johnstown's is in a different spot, because normal market forces would have worked through, if you allowed the economy to bottom out, it would have, the natural forces of free market capitalism would have absorbed those and refurbished them. Now we live in like a dichotomy economy where there's a propped up spending level, and then there's real spending terms where people actually are, and then where programs support a level of economy. So when everyone's having to buy and live at this level, but a majority of them are actually right here, they all look around, they're like, why aren't things getting better? It's because it's cost prohibitive. Like, there's not the amount of money that's required to invest here, and you have to be able to blast from this economic level to this economic level. And for me, deployments in war gave me the war chest to be able to come back and invest in a business that I saw thrive elsewhere and was not applied in Johnstown. And that's what we did. And that allowed me to step up to this next economic level to where I can afford to buy some real estate around the area for a larger place and pay the tax on it and not starve because of it. Whereas the economics in play is, my grandma owned a building and taxes on it are $8,000 a year. Its value is $20,000. And I need to spend $150 to get it up to code and charge this business $1,000 a month to cover the insurance and rent. And then that entrepreneur takes a year to realize that it's not pants that people want from them, it's a hat, but they can't recover from $12,000 in rent. People they can't do that more than once. So entrepreneurship to me is hedging and being able to fail over and over while hedging your risk and exposure to the downside.
So you're allowing people to fail with what you started with the paper company.
Exactly. Sorry. Thank you to wrap that up.
No,
paper company
this is what's so cool, because I don't know if he understands what's coming, because I had no clue when you explained this to me first. It's like, what? Here, and it's like,
right. So we looked around and we said, okay, there's blight everywhere.
What is blight?
Blight is like every other block, there's a house that just, it didn't fall into the right lineage and no one knows who owns it maybe, and it just got neglected. So we saw this stuff going on. We know the conversation was out there that, you know, what's the government doing about it? You know, is there a bake sale to do this? So we look at it, me and, you know, my brother, Seth, and we're like, how can we make this a market need? Like, how do we make a business that makes tearing down houses make people buy our product? And then we think, what is everyone buying that could be disrupted? And we thought paper, toilet paper, paper towels. So
because everybody's got a.
Yeah. So we dove into that business and said, what's it look like now? How do people buy it now? And we realized it's all multinational corporations, Kimberly-Clark, Georgia-Pacific, you know, international investors, and they own the converters, you know. And we just started doing the math, saying like, dude, there's $4 million of money that leaves Johnstown in profit from paper products. Can we give people a reason to buy from us? And say, hey, we might be, you know, 5, 10%, 15% more than what you're picking up here. What if we made it convenient for you? You know, what if we had a block party or dropped it off your house? So this is how we pitched it. And we found a supplier not far from us that we buy in bulk to get our price point down. And my brother goes up every like month and a half. And we took a $30,000 loan out from a local bank who we've had a relationship with in the past of paying things on time. And they were like, what do you want to buy? And we're like, $30,000 worth of toilet paper, you know, and we pitched them. Yeah, we pitched them the plan, and they were like, as long as you personally guarantee it, you know, and I'm like, I will. So we did that, but it was a 5-year note, and we had some individuals. We had a lot of great press at the beginning.
Jeez.
And we tore a house down for $7,000. We tore a house down in a neighborhood that needed a house torn down that government entities couldn't touch because there's historic side to the neighborhood. So traditional money couldn't, governments, that state, federal funding that came in might not have been able to touch. So we came in
and
as a
that process is a lot longer.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a lot
longer. And we just walked in. We're like, who we write the check to? Here's $7,000. They put it to the guy, came over, knocked it down. We made a video of it. And then we said, okay, well, you know, we go to our lawyers. We're like, this is an expense for us. We made tearing down blight a marketing expense. And I'll argue that all day.
Yeah.
You know, that's why you choose to buy from us, is because we act this way. So we're a for-benefit company. A B Corp is, you know, it's nothing really official about it. We're still a for-profit company, which gives us flexibility to jump into tax sales and act in a quick manner. Whereas, you know, if you're, there's different hurdles. There's different restraints for different corporate structures. So this is the 5th year. We paid off that $30,000 loan. Now we're like $430 a month in free cash flow, and you know the best. And so now we have our corporate customers. We've watched, you know, so now we have, you know, almost a house a year being paid for strictly, and we're not even a fraction of a percentage of the market share. You know, we had great press at the beginning, and this is COVID. So, like, remember the great toilet paper shortage of 2020?
They started it during COVID.
Well, that's the first thing I thought of when you said that.
I remember us all standing there. We're like, oh my gosh. We timed this.
When did you start this?
They timed it during the great
shipping
toilet paper depression.
It was like a Wall Street bookie pit or whatever you want to call it. Like, we're standing at home, and I'm like, God, Stanton Street, Denver, Colorado, we're sending paper everywhere.
Unbelievable.
Call our supplier. We're like, we'll take everything that you have.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they're like, well, no, there's no more. We're like,
how about that?
Okay.
Then there's no more.
Then everything dried up, and then we've been approached by some good people who saw that shortcoming in our economy. You know, COVID exposed a lot of gaps in our supply chain as a country, and so there's some good conversations. But Johnstown Paper is so fun because it's just good. But you have to convince people in Johnstown that you're not there. You're not grifting.
Yeah.
You know, like you're literally show them the books, say like, this is what we're doing. There's economics to it. Yeah. This might not work.
Right.
You know, like set the tone and the expectations. This could absolutely fail. And here's how we think it could fail, and here's why we think it might not.
Legit. We're really trying.
And
they're slow to trust.
They are
And
slow to
rightfully
trust.
slow.
Yeah.
It's
so
like
because-
most towns around.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like
Yeah. But this town's been beaten, bruised,
collar.
Yeah.
battered.
Yeah.
They've heard it before.
Yeah, they've
You know,
heard it
they've
over and over again.
before, and-
Absolutely.
Here I am.
Yeah.
I'm gonna save the day, and it's like,
what's
well, you didn't do anything.
what's the latest hit from Summerhill you got going?
Yeah.
What do you
That
got?
is.
I didn't know this about you, by the
yeah.
way,
Oh, yeah.
until today.
Dude, I miss playing music. I miss singing. I do all the a lot of the ceremonies in the military. I'll do a lot of the anthems.
Well, how did you
and
become
things
a
like that.
songwriter?
Flying those missions.
You're like
in Iraq.
you
I was
sing to
just.
yourself,
I was
you?
able. Yeah, I was able to. Well, my grandma was a singer in like an old jazz band, and my mom told me that. And Bart and them walked up. I'd sing. And my mom got a karaoke machine, and Bart tells this story great because they walked outside my house, and I'm sitting there singing karaoke in my room, and they thought it was the funniest thing they'd ever seen in their life. These got to imagine a bunch of 11, 12-year-old kids, and it was probably Mariah Carey. It was some cassette tape.
Yeah.
Knowing you,
It was
definitely
pretty
Mariah.
bad.
It was definitely Mariah Carey.
It was nothing good. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
That's your favorite.
it made me.
Could have been Madonna.
It could have been too.
Could've.
There wasn't
Yeah.
much.
Like a Virgin or something.
Yeah,
like
there
that.
wasn't much
just get
options
into
out
it.
there. And we, Bart tells that story.
So did you have any formal training, singing?
I used to get thrown out of chorus in ninth period. That was I was in the musicals, but always as an extra. I just enjoyed the theater side of things. Never took it seriously until I came back from my first tour of 4 years and sat down with my cousin Greg, and he was playing guitar all the time. It was really, really good, and we just started playing some songs. We're like, hey, let's start a band. And my best friend growing up, Bill Rose, was like, I'm all in on this. So we lived in Pittsburgh and played Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights for like a year and a half. It was one of the most fun periods of my entire life. It was right in between my enlisted days and then commissioning with the Pittsburgh, the 9/11th, and the 758th out at the airport.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing.
My
Yeah,
goodness.
there was a year and a half in there that I got to, play in a band, and we signed with the label, and we recorded 2 songs, and I put 36 cents of gas in my car. I was a construction worker. I was peak construction laborer, where I knew enough to get some stuff done, but not enough, enough to be dangerous was the statement there.
Yeah.
There's a saying there. But I was doing that. That was that period I met my wife, was down there, and she knew I was leaving to go back in. But I put 36 cents of gas in my car and thought, I got to go back in the military. And I was always pulled that way. I just needed a reason to go back. But I had my degree and got commissioned. But playing in a band was so fun. So my sisters play and sing. They're really, really good. My brother does as well. And they kept going and building their own following and acoustic act and weddings. And I'd come home and I'd jump up with them. And
You ever
sing
get
some
back
songs.
into it?
I do. Yeah, I sing a lot. I think I just want to do. I like playing at the local bar.
That's so
just
great.
covers.
He'll
and
be
stuff.
playing
Like,
at the Point this
Yeah.
summer.
I offered
at some
that up
point.
to the guys, and everyone looked at me like they didn't. Well, I don't walk around. I don't wear that. Like Bart knew I was serious.
Yeah.
Bart's wife's a phenomenal singer, but she knew I was serious, and I'm like, look, we'll do the tailgate, and
Yeah,
Take it from there, grow
Yeah,
from there.
yeah.
Yeah, it's got to happen. It's gotta
yeah,
happen.
it would be fun to get that going, and but yeah, I mean the anthem. They have a list of anthem singers, and we always said like Stacy will jump in, or that's Bart's wife, Stacy, or I can jump in if something we needed it, but.
Do you still write songs?
A little bit, not as much
Right,
as I'd
too?
like. Not as much
What do you
as
not
I'd
do,
like.
Forrest Gump?
Well, no,
Yeah, no, really, that's a great call.
no, not as much as I'd
That
like.
is
I mean, I have.
That's a good call. This is Forrest
Yeah.
Gump. Forrest Gonkiewicz.
No, I love Jill's the artistic, creative. It took years, but I can see where when she talks about things. I can go there with her. But musically, it was always just. I was always carry tune and always.
I think that's a wand. Like
Hear it, like it
you
was just,
you have to have a wand waved over you to have that.
Oh, yeah,
that
no doubt,
gene.
no doubt.
Yeah, it's so cool.
It was great. My mom's so supportive. She's always. You can do anything you want, and that was the best mindset of my parents. Was you can do anything you want, and I took it literally.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
well, what do I
Really?
want to do?
Can't-
What do I want to do? My whole life.
I want to be a
was,
ski bum out in Colorado.
Yeah, I'm like
That's
right
right,
now.
yeah.
Yeah. So I've been blessed with a great mom and a great dad and a great wife, and my kids are awesome, and I've been around great Americans and people who inspire me, and that's what I crave now is You know, I want to continually be inspired and passionate about things. So,
Favorite baseball player growing up?
oh, Andy Van Slyke.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow. Why?
I just liked how his movement on the field. I was a huge
You felt like
baseball
you were
guy all
kinda
the way
like
through
him.
12 years. I played
Yeah.
my brother's Colt leg. I was a catcher. I think you knew that. And I was really good at it, and I had fun doing it. And then it just stopped. My
You
brother
fell in
got
love with
out.
football.
I did. I like contact. That was a big part too. I mean, that's why
So you're not big on the rule changes in Major League Baseball then, the catcher. That Michael McHenry lobbied for this, the Posey rule. He didn't like the contact at the plate, so he went to the commissioner's office.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't even have to. I don't even have to fight for that because everybody knows that's a lie.
In front of the plate,
Yeah.
and then I can swipe the guy, and
Yeah.
there's barely any contact.
Yeah, there's 19 innings that prove different.
Yeah,
so,
you're right about that.
Stupid rule.
No, it was. I love baseball, and we had so much fun playing. And that was, after 13, I played on my brother's Colt League team, and then I think you kind of had to start picking up, your sport, like picking your path back.
It's about that 13, 14
yeah
age.
And
You have to start to kind of define
Yeah.
which direction you want to go, and you start to understand. I'm sure, man, I'm pretty good at this contact thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, I craved. It was fun for me to, and then looking back on videos and stuff, I just ultimately decided to collide with people. I was a linebacker, and
Well,
I
who's
was
your
a tight
favorite
end.
Steeler then?
Steeler, probably Aaron Smith. I just liked how he played. I wear the jersey like Cam Hayward. Just you just appreciate. I appreciate the hard nosed side of it. Like there's glory dudes in sports.
Oh, yeah.
And then you
There's
can
muckers and grinders and Millrats.
I lived in the
Amen.
muck.
Amen.
And I liked the muck, and it was. So yeah, I always when we watch now, there's the big names that come across, and I'm always just like that guy's.
Do you have a favorite sports moment?
I got to play on the United States military men's volleyball team while I was deployed. They had a tournament in Qatar, and so they had tryouts to kind of play. So I was thinking, this is great. I was a volleyball player. I played boys volleyball in high school. I was
Forrest Gump. Once
decent
again.
with it.
Yeah,
I was a
of
point
course.
guard in basketball, and then I was a setter in volleyball.
Should see him play ping pong
And
as
then-
well. Yeah.
Of course.
My dad's
yeah,
all
ping pong.
Yeah.
Yeah, and right before the tournament happened, there was a car bomb went off outside the arena, and they were like, "We can extend this deployment." Now, remember when I say deployments, I'm not talking an Army 12 to 18 month deployment. Like ours would block. You can only fly so much before you became the risk to the plane. So the human factor things. There's an hours program, so they would be like, "Get them up." You go for 3 months, 4 months, go home for 3 months.
Oh, wow.
Come back, let that time bleed off.
Wow.
But I happened to be over there, and in between sorties and missions, I played on this team, and they had, and it was great. And I was like, man, I get to stand in a foreign arena, listen to the national anthem. Like who gets to
It's kind of like the Olympics
say that?
for you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I'm like, even though this is a regional men's military volleyball.
But you're wearing.
Cool, though.
Are you wearing red, white, blue?
I'm wearing red, white, blue.
Oh, my
It's like
God.
it would have been the best.
That's why I wear this hat just
Yeah.
about every day because I'm
That is
honored
so cool.
to be any part of that.
That is so
Yeah, and
amazing.
I was like, this is great. And then the coach comes up and they're like, they slipped the tournament back 2 weeks because this car bomb went off. And they're like, we can extend your orders. I'm like, I'm getting out of here.
Gee.
Yeah.
I'm going home.
Yeah.
Love to play in a foreign arena, but like when your time's up over there, you're smoked.
Yes.
And you're like, this is just
Time to go.
This is passing the time for me. I'd love to do this. I wanted to do it, but if you're gonna just extend me, I know I'm gonna be back.
Yeah.
Like this. And that's where your mindset was. I mean, it's just 4-year enlistment, and you're gone for that period. It was gone for 2.5 years, training for 10 months,
Yeah.
home for and then they look at you and they're like, why are you getting out? And you're like, because
there
I
you go.
need. I'm trying to
I
get a
gotta get out,
girlfriend,
that's why.
man. Like, I don't, like I'm 22, 23, but it's a good life, but you have to be prepared for what it can cost you. And you lose friends and to war and being at home and thinking about war. Like, there's all kinds of levels to that. But it's if I had to do it all again, I'd do it. Absolutely would do it all again. Like, it's just.
I know.
What a story.
Right?
Yeah.
And
What a story.
One more thing I want you to share. I saw the video last night. Jacqueline shared it with me. Is you go away for months at a time
Yeah.
And a lot of times you don't know when you're coming back home.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean,
And
we
recently,
try our best to figure that out.
recently, one of your last times you came home, you got to go into assembly, and I saw your kids not know and run up.
wow.
And I'm going to add that video
They
in.
did a
right
surprise.
Dude, a tear
return.
fell in my eye because that was.
Well, how'd they set up? Tell us about the setup.
I want to hear the story.
Well,
behind
it was my unit is part of AFSOC, and so kind of dynamic use of airplanes with different elements of the soft world. So SEALs, we had an electromagnetic warfare mission for a while, and then we were converting to something more aligned with funding programs into the future. So as we moved into those,
So it changed from being the boom guy.
Yeah.
well, no, boom guy was enlisted days, active duty, and then I went to air mobility, low level, TAC nav, like formation, airdrop, like 300 feet, flying, dropping air stuff, resupply, all that stuff, and then that's what I did at Pittsburgh. And those guys, I mean, that unit was high speed, and my current unit, the 193rd. They were converting to something towards that mission set. And so when I threw my resume out into the world, I didn't even know they existed. Their mission was called Commando Solo. It was a platform, kind of an information warfare platform, manipulated the electromagnetic spectrum in different ways. That's where a lot of the battle
I know,
space
it's
is.
like,
So,
it's
like,
way up here, right?
there's a lot of warfare people think of as like, you know, you look at Ukraine, it's artillery and drones. And there's a whole lot of other levels of warfare, and it's a lot of stuff isn't even. There's battles going on, like there's cyberspace, you know, like there's things that aren't physically visible. That there's current struggles to control and influence to our advantage over adversaries that we're not at war with. We just need to influence. We need to be in control of that domain. And a lot of it doesn't make sense to a lot of folks, but it makes sense to a lot of people in the military, because when the time comes to apply force, when you organize, train, and equip forces and it comes time to utilize those, you need to control aspects of the battle space that you might not think that you should, but it costs a lot of money to control it. You know, so a lot of times people look at the defense budget and they're like, oh man, it's $800 billion. Half that's going towards, you know, veterans trying to just, you know, their life kind of can get screwed up by being part of this. And they're, you know, the pursuit of trying to solve their issues, that's half of it. And the other half is just being, you know, being relevant in those spaces. Because if you don't, it's just another line of effort, another avenue of attack for the enemy. And we have to constantly think about that. And that's what makes it tough for when you don't have that large campaign and the war is changing. And you know, you go to war with the army you have, not, you know, the military you have, not the one that's needed for that war. So you adapt at that time. So our unit, being this is a guard unit now, don't knock the guard.
Right.
Okay, high speed dudes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a military dude. So, you know, but they're active. There's active duty guys on my base. My friends are active duty, and they're just high speed and fantastic Americans. And I get to go see them every now and then, you know, if I really lean into that side of my life. Usually on the riverside, it's the summer, I lean towards the outfitter, I start doing this, growing this out. And then when I show up in, you know, a few weeks, I got to shave this all off and don the uniform, and I get to see them again, and they're always excited, and we just get to hang out and do that. But as we converted missions, it kind of forces the military as a whole to, like I said, with the organized, train, and equip, assess where we're at, where do we need to train our forces, and what does that look like. So a lot of the pipelines, a lot of schools are full. You know, sometimes resources don't get directed to a program where they need to be, so it can take long. So for me, as an example, it was supposed to, you know, there's a 4-month course, turns into 9. As a 42-year-old guy with 4 kids, it's a big ask. You know, to say, hey, leave your your businesses. And my leadership's been fantastic.
Leave your family.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, and head out
for 3 months, and it ends up being 9.
This one, but this particular moment was a 9-month. You're gone.
Yeah, it ended up being 9 months.
And somebody decided to when you came back, your family was not aware.
No, and that's where I had to get. Sorry, this keeps happening to me. I'm chatting so much. This is delicious, by the way.
It is.
My God.
This is the Rocky. This is the Rocky Patel quarter century that we're enjoying on this edition of Hold My Cutter. It's the 25th anniversary, and it's really a great smoke.
It is.
And 25th year because we want to celebrate that he's almost 25 years in the military.
That's it.
That's the whole idea.
Worked.
Thank you, Rocky.
Hold My Cutter is nothing by chance.
Nothing.
Okay.
Nothing.
This is all done well in advance. So anyway, so now somebody comes to you, and one of your kids has an assembly.
Yeah, so I let my leadership know, like, hey, my business season, the prime season's coming up, and it's really, you have X amount of training left. They're utilizing their resources, and I told them, like, hey, I got to step back. So that's the beautiful thing about when you have good leaders in your life and good functioning staff above you. I don't want to say staff.
They know it's time.
They know when it's time to reach in and be like, hey, Chad's at a limit here. For his life,
probably start glazing
stressed.
over. You're burned out.
Yeah, they're like, and I vocalize it where everyone's keeping an eye on each other. Like, look, I've been away from my kids for 9 months. This, I'm at X progress point. I need to step out. My business is ramping up the river and all that stuff for the summer. And so they were able to execute that change order, which to active duty, it blew their mind. They're like, where are you going? I'm like, I got to go home.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, you stay here till it's,
no,
forever. Till and I'm like,
it's
no,
my time. Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And so anyhow, I came home. We didn't tell the kids, and the school was gracious enough to kind of let us come in during a lunch assembly and surprise them, and just say, hey, we're, so and so, we want to welcome so and so back from, to my kids. I was deployed. Like, I was CONUS to them. I was CONUS.
They don't know what you're.
And they thought it was gonna be 3 months.
Of course,
right?
Right.
Yeah.
And what we're doing, CONUS, like this stuff that you see these guys doing, it's not driving down the street. There's dangers to it.
Yeah.
All these, and we do it here, and it's and that's the level that you have to ask yourself is how much, am I willing to put on the line? Because you always feel like you're rolling the dice. You always feel like, hey, the longer I'm in, I've seen this stuff happen, but you train harder. So whenever you're around people, like I said, when I go out there and you feel like you're a step back, it's not just that you're a step back. You start thinking, I know where I need to be and operate at. And that's where you just get real honest with your peers. And it forces, Jill and I to have real conversations about what's the future look like, and a lot of it is my kids are in this sweet spot. Next 10 years of their life could be the best 10 years of my life.
Of course.
And,
my gosh, you kidding me?
You pivot over and you've been around long enough. You see it.
How surprised were the kids?
Oh, they had no clue. It was great.
Running through the video.
It's remarkable. Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. It was a good. My wife is always thinking about. She's always very cognitive of the kids would enjoy that.
Oh man,
a lot.
For example, you drove from Johnstown to Gatlinburg to Bradenton after we kind of just threw it out there to say, hey, why don't you come down? We're going to be down there. And they said, yeah, why not?
Well, it's just like the backyard. I mean, it's not
you get that Pennsylvania perm
little
cloud.
jaunt.
You get that gray cloud over your head.
Bradenton. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like we got to get 16-hour drive.
Yeah. It was great, man. We have that white van. It's
incredible.
It makes life a lot easier. And,
I'll tell you,
my wife makes everything.
We cannot thank you enough for
first
of all for your service.
Absolutely,
I mean, most importantly, Chad Gonkiewicz, who incredible story.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored and humbled.
What an amazing story!
Be heard here.
And make sure you like and subscribe because we certainly like this story.
Yes,
amazing stuff.
Amazing stuff.
We'll continue and chat, and you'll continue to watch and enjoy another episode of Hold My Cutter down the road.